So welcome to all the people who are here for the first time. So a lot of people are here, they've been here before. But if this is your first time, welcome to the photo gallery. And what we do here is try to bring incoming artists who don't really have a place to display their artwork or need a solo show. So, quick story. About 30 years ago in the 70s, John Robinson was creating a community newspaper called the Green Valley News. And in that paper, one particular weekend, I saw the picture of Doc, who owns the drugstore down in Shirlington Road. And I was looking at the picture and I was trying to figure out who took this picture. And then I saw the picture of the funeral home, and there was no markings on any of the pictures of who the photographer was. So, I meant to ask John about who the photographer was, but every time I saw him, I would forget we were doing something else. And so let's fast forward here, 30 years later. I'm at Paul's studio, and a couple of people say to me, "You need to get Lloyd Wolf at the gallery." And I'm like, "Sure, I don't care who comes in. I just want to have somebody, in the gallery." So I see Lloyd at Paul's studio, and I approach him and I say, "Hey, I'm Felicia Beckfield." And he says, "Oh, I know who you are." I was like, "Okay." So I went on and invited him to have a show here at the gallery. And he said, "I have the perfect pictures for your show, because your gallery's in Green Valley." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm going to send you the pictures tonight." Lo and behold, when I get the pictures at night, it's the pictures of Chin's funeral home and Doc's that I had been looking for like 30 years, trying to figure out who the photographer was. And it was Lloyd. And so that's sort of how he came about being here at the photo gallery. And I'd just like to say that it's some very interesting people in here. So, mix and mingle, find out who people are. And the show is going to be up until June 19th, which is Juneteenth. And we're open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 4 to 7, Saturdays by appointments, Sundays from 1 to 6, and of course Monday and Tuesdays we're closed. So without further ado, here's Lloyd.
Yay.
I want to thank Felicia for having this and being patient with me while we put it together and having this amazing space. When she mentioned it to me, the first thing I thought of was, as we discussed this, I had to work from the community. And a lot of the work I do is about artwork in the community, for the community, by the community. And when I saw that she had the gallery in the valley, where about half of these pictures were made, I knew that this was the right home for it. And that her commitment to the arts and to community-based arts was important. South Arlington, as many of us know, doesn't really have the gallery space that the other parts of Northern Arlington have. So it meant even more. So just to give us a little bit of history of how this came about, is that in 1979, Paula Endo and I, Paula is a photographer and photography teacher, we both with the county schools, were at a conference for Society of Photographic Education, and we heard about something called the National Endowment of Art's Photo Survey Grants. And this guy I knew had gotten a grant for Miami Beach and photographed it, and said, "Here's how you apply." So we went and did it. And lo and behold, long story short, we got the money. So we spent, and the very tail end of 1979, 1980, to the beginning of 81, photographing the whole county. And there's a catalog in the back if you want to see a selection from that. There were 125 pieces in that, in the finished body of work, thousands in the collection. But that was shown at what's now the Museum of Contemporary Art, used to be called Arlington Arts Center, and the library. The library funded the catalog, that work was donated to the library for historical reasons. And that's probably where you saw those pictures, because the library has a few of them in their collection, and they're open to the public use. And then, but I've been thinking for the last, 44 years, what do I do with the rest of it? I have tons of work prints and lots of stuff about the county, and it's just kind of been bubbling along in my thought process. When we were doing that show, I shared this with a couple of people today, when we were doing that whole project, we tried to photograph the whole county, which is, frankly, was too much for two people to do in a year, but we did our best. But we had much better access, particularly the people, in the blue-collar, white, and working-class neighborhoods, and in the traditional African-American neighborhoods. At the time, I only thought there were 3, there are 4, but Halls Hill, Johnson Hill, and Green Valley, which we're in today. And there's also Butler Homes, which is a smaller section. And we ended up, I would, as a young guy, and I would walk around and make pictures. When I go up into Halls Hill, I meet people on the street and make pictures and get some stuff. Several of them are from there. Same thing in Johnson Hill, also known as Arlington View. A lot of pictures were taken outside the Hoffman Boston School in the summer program. In the Valley, I had a student, I was teaching a career center, named Rosalind Moore. She was the president of Wakefield Senior Class. And she said, you need to meet this guy, John Robinson. He's like the unofficial mayor of our community. So I said, okay, sure. He brings me down to meet John. He was a enthusiastic kind of guy. And next thing I know, he's ordering me about, you take a picture of this, take of this, you call me on the phone, come over, we're having a rally, come over. And I thought, well, this is great. I'm getting much better stuff than I would just wandering around. So I was getting into the churches, I was getting into schools. He introduced me to small business people, particularly the pictures of the Chin brothers and Doc Muse in the corner have become kind of icons in the community history, which was not intended at the time, but turned out nobody else had been photographing them. The picture with Doc Muse is kind of funny because he was a shy man and not prone to public display. And John walked in and said, this guy's going to make your picture. And I'm like, who is this guy? I don't know, Next thing I know, he's out, and Doctor put up with John. Okay, I'll get my picture made. Chin brothers, he called them out of their offices, came out and did it. There's another gentleman who was a Mr. Walker, who had a little shoe store. That it was the same thing. He said, I'm working on my shoes. He said, come on out. Many of the pictures in the Valley were taken at many of the better ones were taken at rallies. Because it was before there was Martin Luther King's holiday, it was a federal holiday, and everybody was there, and John would say, come on, this would be useful stuff to photograph. So there were church people there, community speakers, kids, and we made the pictures. All the pictures were made on film. I had 2 little Pentax cameras back in the day. They weren't actually very reliable, but they worked. And so all these pictures are not, they're new prints. The original prints were 8x10s. A couple of them were scanned from the prints. The rest are scanned, I guess I scanned them in January from negatives, and then had them printed locally. So they're not vintage prints, but they're vintage images. And they're done by a guy up in North Arlington, did the printing for me. And I gave him prints to match. I have some favorites among them. For those who don't know, this is John Robinson at the center. I didn't know her name until a couple of days ago. This is Ms. Moten, who apparently was a board member who ran the operation. She was also like, okay, John told me to get my picture made. It's interesting for me on a personal level to see these, because I had to look at the proof sheets, the contact sheets back then. Now when I photograph it digital, shot like that, I might take 20 of them. Back then, film was expensive, and you couldn't see what you're getting, so I took 1. And then many of these, the crossing guards, I don't know why, there's 1 shot. John said, this is the crossing guard lady, she's important, click, and it's a different way of working. And when we did the original selection, we had to balance all of Arlington out. We also were making choices from a mixture of sort of demographics and geography, and for the whole county. For this, it was fun. I was able to go back. I have them labeled. Go back and look at the original proofs, choose them. Most of them were chosen for aesthetic reasons. They make sense to me they have to make sense as pictures. There's probably still pictures in the files that might be of some interest for historic reasons, but they're not that interesting. John had me photograph a bunch of houses. I know there was a trolley stop up not far from here. It doesn't look like much. It's a building. It's not particularly interesting. It's still there. What I know now about the county, I've probably done more extensive architecture, because what I've learned about particularly the older Black communities, the houses were individually built. The county during segregation days was not enforcing code well, so people had more input into their own homes. They had to build, they're more unique, whereas a lot of the county, they're built by developers and they're cookie cutter. Whereas here, they're all individualized, and I think if I had that to do over again, it'd be interesting to document them more thoroughly, rather than, like Barcroft, nothing wrong with it, but Barcroft Apartments is 60 acres, it all looks the same, right? Whereas here, every house is different. And I didn't know at the time, I was young and I was fairly new to Arlington. Some of the homes, there's like a couple of really interesting homes in each community that have become designated historic over time, some of which I've photographed for the more recent project, Columbia Pike Documentary Project, which is a different creature. There's a couple that are not taken in the neighborhoods, the truth neighborhoods. This one was taken at Homecoming at Washington, then Washington VA, now Washington Liberty. And I was telling somebody earlier, there's kind of an odd story with it. I was telling Mary Hines that this was the homecoming king and queen that year. And it didn't occur to me that I was doing anything else. But when we were doing this project, someone in County Economic Development Office thought, oh, maybe the pictures you're taking will be useful for promoting Arlington business or tourism. So she wanted to look at my work. And of course, none of this stuff is useful to that kind of action. And she got to this picture, and I just, this homecoming king and queen, I could see her negative reaction. I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was clear she disapproved of the race mixing. And I was like, it didn't even occur to me at the time. And I thought, and thank God, things aren't where they should be, but they've gotten a little better. I don't think I would hope I wouldn't receive that kind of reaction anymore. But I remember being shocked by that. I grew up in the area. I went to the former Jeb Stuart High School, so I knew what I was hearing. Those kind of stuff, that kind of thing. A couple others, like these workmen, I don't remember where I took it. There's no note. My notes, it's not like digital where I can embed every picture with data. Just each page will say, such and such a neighborhood. That one, there's a couple of others. Like this guy, I don't remember. This one was taken up in Buckingham, and there's one other from the Buckingham area. But the rest are in the traditional neighborhoods, which are each quite different with their own history. Dr. Taylor is here as a noted historian of the county. I thought he had two, but he has 3 books of county history that he's done. One of the things I've learned working with this community and in these projects is that the only really stable communities of individuals and families in the county are the Black communities, who have done unbelievable work documenting their own history. And to me, this is just my little bit to give back to what I've learned. Because and Wilma Jones was here earlier, who's also done history, a piece on the county. She lives up in Halls Hill. And this to me is just to show who we are. I think the county, one of the impressions I got, I was telling my partner Ruth this, when I was working on this, how there's a sense to me that how much Arlington has changed, that you can see even in these. It was a simpler, not that Arlington was, you know, rural, the Delta of Mississippi, but it was slower, warmer, you know, a little less crowded, a little less of an attitude. You know, I found in these communities I walked around, people were being really, really nice to me, asking me to come in their homes. There's one of my favorites, this guy, I don't know where it is, but over there, he's holding up a beer. It was really hot. Here, have one. I mean, that wasn't going to happen to me up in Cambridge Forest. You know, I got run out of those neighborhoods. I'm not making that up. I would be told to leave those neighborhoods, and they say, you can't photograph here. Whereas I'd be here, and people would be like, give me a lemonade. You know, or this guy's name, all I know about him is his name was Timmy. He gave me a beer, and I needed it. And so I think hopefully the sense of the warmth of the community is visible here, and the strengths of the community. One of the things I've been enjoying, and it was one of Felicia's hopes, was that we'd be able to identify these people. I only knew a handful of names, and it's been a pleasure today to see people going through that so-and-so, and I just found out where Roz Moore is from Dr. Taylor. I'd lost touch with her. And so I think that's important. Eventually, I'm going to find a good home for these outside here. All the pictures are for sale. And thank you, Felicia, for this opportunity. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
What year was the homecoming king and queen? What year was that?
All of them are 1980.
1980.
1980. You know, and I was in the first. Well, we used to think we were first. Turned out we were second. You know, growing up in Northern Virginia, I was kind of used to those attitudes. I was in the first, at least in Fairfax County, integrated Boy Scout troop in the area, 664 out of Comor Methodist. So we integrated basically without incident. And by the time I was in Arlington, it seemed like old news to me. But I'm white. I'm Jewish, so I had some awareness of what discrimination can mean, and from the kids I knew in the troop. But by 1980, I thought it was over. No, clearly, and unfortunately, we're still dealing with it. So, yeah.
Hi, Lloyd.
Oh, hi.
I may have missed the beginning, but why 1980?
We had gotten an NEA grant.
Okay.
From Kathy Gauss was the director. And in fact, the way we found out we got the grant, I was at a gas station and Kathy pulled in and said, "You got the grant." She was living in Arlington. So she said, "Come see me." I went downtown to, find out the details of it. But we had wrote the grant in, I think, the beginning of '79. And it was the first time I'd ever applied for anything like that. But at that time, NEA was consciously trying to replicate some of the work from the late 1930s of the Farm Security Administration, all the great documentary work you all know about from the Depression. They were trying to replicate that. And they funded many. There was a great one in Kansas, one in East Baltimore, a couple in Miami Beach, etc. There was one book been written about that project, but most of that work, it was never centrally located. It's all still in the communities, rather than known. It's not known like the FSA work. Dr. Taylor?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that through the gallery, you find a lot of historical facts that just by coming that you didn't know. For instance, we have the first black principal after integration with Mr. Bollin sitting right here, who was the principal of Glebe Elementary School. The other factor was he was a resident. His home was one of those that were taken for to build the roadway into the eminent domain. 66. No, in the 42. His home was taken to build the roadway into the Pentagon building. There is a story about the eminent domain of East Arlington. So, you know, we just welcome people coming into the gallery because you can find out a lot of historical facts just by who visit. If you really want to know complete Arlington and not just one side of Arlington.
Yeah, I think it's important this stuff gets shared and written down because I've done other work in historical stuff, and I'm convinced that history is what somehow doesn't get thrown away.
Yeah, I'm interested in,
Yes, sir.
that story has been lost.
Mm-hmm.
When they destroyed our homes, using eminent domain as an excuse, when I researched eminent domain, when they are supposed to use eminent domain, they are supposed to enhance a community. They destroyed our community. They was about a month to get out. And so I am working with the county now to try to get some kind of response from them relative to that what they did to us. I was very poor. They took our homes and put my family in trailer camps. The great USA put our family, burned the homes, gave us a month and burned the homes down to build that war department. So I'm still in the, soon we have a Queen City Memorial built down there, but I'm still working with the county to get some kind of response, and anybody can support me, please do. They got $50 million from the government. So if you want to get my name, I'm interested. If you follow up on that, I'm very passionate. I'm in my 90s now, but still fighting that battle in terms of what they did to us, as they've done all over the country to black folks. When they hear eminent domain, everybody gets scared. But they do, in the Fifth Amendment, there is eminent domain. But when you research eminent domain, it means they are supposed to enhance, as I mentioned, a community. They have destroyed, they destroy a lot of our community. That's my speech.
Yeah, I didn't know there were people still around.
Yes.
I remember reading about them, but I didn't realize it was, there were still folks around. Thank you. Mary Hines was here earlier, and a couple of people running for office were here, but it's just, have you talked to the county board, or?
I'm speaking with someone in the county board now.
Hopefully they'll
In
follow
fact, she
up.
came to my house. We're still working on getting some response from the county. And I've also reached out to the Pentagon because I found the document, the document that the deed that was they used to destroy the area. And where you can, I've got all that documentation I have, So I'm still working. Any support I can give, I'll give you my number. We work on it.
This was the Queen City area?
Yeah. Queen City was just a microcosm. The folks that are in Queen City came from Freeman's Village. And when they, at the turn of the century, they moved to Queen City, which was only about 4 or 5 acres, and then they expanded out to East Arlington. 300 or 400 homes there. They had all kinds of black businesses, grocery stores. There was a fire department there. There were barber shops there, and all those places were demolished to build that war department. So I'm very passionate about that being revived.
Could you blame that on FDR when he was driving around in his car? And they said, could you blame that move on FDR when he was president? Because supposedly he was driving around in his car and he was looking for a site for the War Department, and he just said, put it here.
Oh, it's a black area, who the hell cares? And just destroy them. Yeah.
Wow. We got a lot of work to do in this country. We got a lot of work to do. I mean, I'm working on a different project, and the phrase, and I'm Jewish, and there's a phrase, tikkun olam, to repair the world and heal the world. We have a lot of work to do in that arena, all of us. So anyway, thank you for coming. If there's any other questions, I'm going to be here.